What up, y'all? Welcome back to the Bees Like That podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris. I'm gonna try this again. So I need to be transparent with y'all. So I'm a little bit of a baby, or maybe I'm just an artiste by nature, right? All right. So this is how it went. I sat down, prepared to record this episode, and I did. Well, I thought I did. About the second step of AA, in line with my goal of doing one step per week, hence the 12 steps of AA podcast series. Anyway, so today was step 2. Sat down, thought I did it. I was really happy about how it went. Felt like it flowed really well. And then went to go find the video or stop the video and realized that I had not hit record. Well, I had hit record and I heard a little something in the background, but I was on a different screen. And I was like, maybe it stopped. I was like, nah, it's still going. 30 minutes in. And I was in there talking to myself, talking to God. It was practice. But so I wish it was that simple. I wish it was just practice. But it's really tough for me. Like if I'm in a certain headspace, right? And I'm motivated to do something and I'm connected to it and I get distracted somehow, I get thrown off my square with this kind of stuff. It is really hard for me to try to recapture that energy. I definitely won't be able to like say again the exact same things I said before. Because I feel like a lot of some of the messaging I kind of like channel. I'm not trying to be weird or woo woo, but I feel like I definitely kind of channel some of this stuff. And once I'm just like, I don't want to do it again. Anyway, so this is probably like the 8th attempt at trying to do it again. But if it's not going well, I'm going to be dissatisfied with it right out the gate if I'm not connected to it. Just like a TV show, it's maybe ADD or whatever. If I don't get connected to it right away, like I hear people talk, oh, it's a great show, I love it. Binge watch 18 million seasons. I didn't get past episode 1 because I didn't connect to it. Anyway, step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Simple yet powerful and profound. Understanding power greater than ourselves. This I realize because it was once for me, can be and is an obstacle for a lot of people, or a barrier rather, to accessing AA or other 12-step recovery support groups that have, I guess you would call it, a God component. In my time in active addiction, as well as going through treatment and my time in and out of the halls of AA and NA and whatever, I've heard it all. I've heard people say that AA is a religious cult and, express grievances and resentment about being required to believe in God. And this might be people who are part of the LGBTQ community who feel like, they attach strongly God with Christianity and how some people in Christianity view that community. Whatever. I'm not here to weigh in on that. I'm just saying that these are people and experiences that are legitimate, right? At least to them, because they're indeed a barrier, and at least in their mind, like I say, to accessing AA. At any rate, like I say, I've had God be a barrier for me too. 100%. I've shared it on the podcast many times that in my life, I've had, at least in the most intense points with this struggle, an open defiance to God, right? Like I would openly challenge God because I was angry. I was angry about being an alcoholic. I was angry that I had, in my mind, different strengths and talents and things like that, and inherent worth that potentially would never be realized because I couldn't overcome this thing. I couldn't get better. I felt broken. And I didn't feel like anybody cared. And I would look at other people who I would hear them share about their connection with God and with, the 12 steps and the higher power. And I would be like, Cap, you're bullshitting. You're so full of fucking shit. And it would drive me nuts. It would drive me crazy. Because I'm like, I feel like you're full of shit, but yet somehow you got 5 years. And then low key, I didn't even really believe that. Because I'm comparing their experience against mine. Where I would do shit like lie and tell people that I had 6 months when I would know damn well I was just out kicking it that weekend. This was way early on. Or just going to meetings to get my slip signed because I got the nudge from the judge. But anyway, I feel fortunate that has changed for me. And I think that one of the reasons why that changed for me is I had to continue to go through a lot. I had to have this balance of pain, age, wisdom, experience, and just, the combination of all that shit, meaning time on this world and in this experience of mine, it put me in a position where I was ready. I was ready to be humble. I was ready to and willing to accept that I could be weak, that I could offer things up, that I do to this day. How beautiful I feel that it is that I can, to my God, most of the time successfully and sometimes successfully repeatedly throughout the day, but offer all of my anxieties, all of my burden, all of my hardship, all of my frustration, any and all of my confusion about this life. And what is beautiful to me is that no matter how many times there's a promise that's been made, that there's nothing that I can do that will be overburdensome to my higher power. That gives me great relief. That gives me tremendous relief. But it's not like that for some people. Some people, they continue, as I did before I finally got it, to bang their head against this concept of God and a higher power. They just can't get over it. All right, cool. You don't have to. Because for some of y'all, your higher power can be and is the collective wisdom of the group, or even fellowship within the program itself. Meaning that you do have the ability to define this higher power for yourself. You have the ability to tailor it to match your program. There's going to be people out there who disagree with that. I don't give a fuck about what they say. Because just like my program is my program, their program is their program, their inventory, and your program is your program and your inventory. So whatever the fuck it is that you have to do to build this idea, build a program around this idea or concept of something that is bigger than you, has more power than you, that is greater than you, that can shoulder all the shit that you can't take and do on your own. Whatever the fuck it is you got to do to be able to do that shit. Because that's what I'm talking about. And then, look, low key, are there people out there who are full of shit? Of course. But that's everywhere. That's not just an AA. Are there people out there who are on the fringes and like the extreme ends of the spectrum who like just want to big book thump people to fucking death and who want to beat you upside the head with a Bible and can quote verses and pages and all the shit? Yeah, there are people like that. And good. I think that we need people like that. If for no other reason to let me know that I'm cool right where I'm at. I don't need to be like that because they got that covered. But seriously, there's room is what the point is. There's room for me, there's room for that, and there's room for you, right? And the cool part about it is you don't have to explain, qualify, or justify your higher power, your program to anybody. That shit is between you and your higher power. My shit is between me and God. I just choose to share my shit with people so that there's an example, a realistic example for practical recovery in everyday life. That's all I'm trying to do. And when we're talking about the concept of sanity, what it means within the context of addiction. If I have to explain this to you, I mean, fuck it. I'm going to do it. And that's the point of this anyway. That's the reason why we're here. Is why we're talking about it, right? So, a lot of us, most of us, at some point, no matter what our life was shaped like before, had points or a point or a life full of it, saner, more peaceful, more serene parts of our lives. At least compared to what active addiction looks like and the insanity of that. And it's true that and when I say this, I believe this with my entire heart. Just because a person stops using drugs, stops drinking alcohol, doesn't mean that their life is going to improve. I think addicts overall, at least internally, deep down, we get it. Because that, I think, in my mind, is there's a race between possibly fatal withdrawal symptoms from my drug of choice, which is alcohol, and the shit that happens once it's removed, once my solution is removed. And what am I talking about? So even at the end, when we can peer through the veil as addicts and alcoholics, and we can see, all of our incurred trauma, all of our wreckage, we can see out there doing push-ups and calisthenics, burpees and shit. We can see all of the stuff that we brought with us from childhood. We can see all this shit out there. And it's not getting weaker. It's getting stronger. It's getting its wind up. Nothing we've done to try and drown it, to try and choke it out, to try and ignore it, to try and stuff it down. The more that we do any of that stuff, it's like that abomination in the Hulk. With any and everything we throw at it, it just takes it and uses it as fuel. It makes it stronger. It makes its heartbeat even stronger. Right? It's just out there doing push-ups. We understand that pretty quickly too. Like, this isn't something that takes a while. When I say that life doesn't get better, it gets different. And that's like, if you're lucky, it just gets different. We know, or at least I know, to expect relatively quickly. As soon as I'm just not like hammered and fucked off, here we go with the intrusive thoughts. Here we go with the guilt. And it's not just like, it doesn't start slow. It's not subtle, right? It is a fucking sinister symphony and theater of any and every intrusive, painful thought that you can think of. Every feeling that you've been stuffing down for years. Every uncomfortable thing that you've tried to avoid for the last however long is now whipping your ass. And you're the only person who can see, feel, taste, and smell that shit. Literally. You're the only person. We can talk to people about it, and it's advised. You know what I'm saying? But we that's one of the reasons why we try to avoid it. But the good thing is, restore us to sanity. It means that we don't have to do on our own not any of, but no. We can take with us our higher power through these dark, winding roads of misshapen thought patterns and damaging and dangerous thought patterns and behaviors. And recognize that this path, or this journey, this process is something that is far beyond what we can handle with simply our own willpower, one's own willpower. I need that firm but gentle guiding hand of my higher power to get me through this shit. Now, it may just be that sanity in the beginning looks like a reduction of those things. Not that it's a complete removal of it, but it's just to quiet that din. It's to quiet that chaos. It's to remove those irrational feelings of wanting to just end it all and relapse, or maybe eat a bullet or take a lethal dose, because it can be overwhelming. It can be too much. It can be too much. But we have in our higher power, again, however you've chosen to define it, however you've subjectively figured out how this is going to fit, how you're going to build a program and a life around this concept of a higher power. That thing, whatever it is, that structure, that creation is where you can park a lot of the shit that you can't take. I've done it. I still do it. And I'm telling you, even during times when I felt like it wasn't working, like this I was never going to be sane again. I was never going to be able to make sense of any of this shit again. And that, again, this is all bullshit. It's fruitless. This is a waste of time. God doesn't give a fuck about me. If he did, or if they did, why am I continuing to go through this stuff? And then little by little, as time went on, I started to be more and more willing, and I started to understand more and more about the process and how integral to that process all of those things were and are that I was feeling. That I couldn't step over them. I couldn't shake them. I had to take it. I had to feel it. I had to, because it's a part of the recipe. These are even in the background strokes of paint that turn into different tones that create the backdrop or the sunscape for the mosaic of our lives in this experience, which is dynamic and it changes all the time. And thank God that it changes. It's not going to be the same as it was for me back then. But point is, this shit is essential. Another part of step 2 for me is letting go of self-reliance. These all kind of tie together, right? At one point or another, and for however long, each one of us, mathematically I'm not going to entertain it, but there's probably people who didn't go through this. But most of us addicts thought that we would be able to control our addiction, that it wasn't going to rule us, and we could do it on our own. We didn't need God in this process. God ain't out here on these streets with me. Right. Okay, so I get it, right? Like, in our daily lives, we have to get up, we have to get out. The same way that we got up and got out and got our solutions, the same way we have to get up, get out, and get our solutions for recovery. Same way. Right? Once we become better students of this process and better followers of our higher power and the instruction and the promptings that we get, because I do believe that within my whole heart that I get promptings from my higher power, little nudgings. You know, it could be your inner voices, whatever, but it's coming from somewhere. Once I better understood that process, the clearer it was to me that the more powerful I would become more powerful in this experience the less that I tried to control it myself, and the more that I gave over to my higher power. The more control that I relinquish to my higher power, the more power and control that I actually get, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It can kind of sound like word soup, but it's the definition is found in the experience. The definition for that is found in the feeling. It's hard to articulate. But it's definitely something that you have to feel, right? There's a relief of tension. There's a liberation there, right? When you, as addicts and alcoholics, one of the things about us is we have this compulsion to want to control as much of our direct environment as possible, and no matter how much or what strategy we try to employ, we never seem to get a grip on it, and we seem to always lose steps and lose ground. And before you know it, things are just running through our hands. And we don't understand why. We can't figure out how to stop it from happening. Until you stop trying to manage shit that doesn't belong to you. That's God's job. Another aspect of step 2 for me that I think is an important thing to highlight is faith and hope in recovery, which, again, I really struggled to think was a legitimate thing. I didn't think it existed. I didn't have faith that I would find hope in recovery because, like I say, I would look at people who would, through their experiences, tell me about the power of, the ultimate power of and healing abilities of their higher power, and how connected to them they were, and how connected to life they were, and how you could measure the progress that one would make along this journey of recovery by how connected one was to their higher power. And I would say to myself, bullshit. I would say to people, bullshit. You're full of shit. I don't believe you. I didn't believe that this process worked. I didn't believe that and what I think it boiled down to, part of it, this anyway, was I didn't believe that I deserved. I didn't believe that I was worthy of the version of life that I observed other people having, that I had envy for, and that I would sometimes daydream and place myself into. But I would immediately dismiss this idea as like fantasy and silly and foolish, because of course that could never be my life, because I'm a piece of shit. It could never be my life because I don't get it. I don't get things. I only fuck things up. That's what I'm good at. That's my lane. I'm angry. I'm that guy. I'm that dude. And this is another reason why now, especially, that I podcast, that I am open in all spaces about my experience with addiction. I mean, even in my childhood and in my active personal addiction to drugs and alcohol, I hope that it will encourage other people going through the same shit to at least step forward to learn, or be willing to even consider that it's possible. And to even consider that it's possible that something greater than them exists. I know that's difficult for us addicts and alcoholics to fucking wrap our little fucking brains around, that we're not the center of the universe and that there are bigger things happening than us. Once we get there, though, it's a pretty fucking amazing thing, man. I remember while I was working at Detox, and back then, I don't know if it changed while I was there. I don't know if it's changed again since, but back then, the people in my position, which is detox treatment specialists, we were the ones who would take people's vital signs. Damn, brain freeze without a Slurpee. That's crazy. But we were the ones who would take people's vital signs, especially in the in the old, but especially in the new facility, until everything kind of got sorted out with the nursing staff. But anyway, making my rounds, and I'm talking to this dude, and it's already kind of awkward, right? And I get it, because I've accessed stabilization services before. So there's this need, right? Well, at least for me, and I think I observe this in other people, to legitimize themselves as human beings outside of what we're experiencing together, with it either being me accessing services or them accessing services, right? That, they want to share with people, not just particularly me, just me in this instance, but they want to share with people, that they're into cool shit, that they're smart, that they're capable, that this thing is hard, and they want to be understood, and they want to be seen as a complete person. I get it. I did the same shit. So that's the kind of conversation I'm having with this guy. And, he shared with me, and he knew my story too. And so he had a level of comfortability with me, because this was a person who I'd seen quite a bit. He's kind of stuck in the cycle of relapse and admittance to our facility. But anyway, he shared with me that God was an obstacle for him, higher power. That was a tough one for him. In fact, that he didn't know if he was an atheist, but he just didn't believe in God. It was something that he couldn't connect to. He didn't want to talk about religion. He didn't want to consider being spiritual. None of that shit. He didn't know what came after death. He didn't give a fuck. That was just kind of his take on it. But he was with it enough to know, or he was sharing with me anyway, his resentment that like this was an obstacle for him to AA. Like this is a real legit barrier for him. He just couldn't get past it. And I'd been there before, and we talked a little bit about that. And he was like, well, what was it for you? And like I told him, and I tell people, like, they were like, what? How did you finally get it? And I said, God, homie. Like, it was God. That was like I say, once I sorted that higher power part out, I began to see not just one possibility for a pathway forward, but many. I saw different versions of what it could look like. And, I allowed my higher power to guide me to the one that I think best fit me in my family's needs, moving forward. But anyway, like I told him, like it was God. He's like, man, I can't get that. So what do I do? And I just looked at him and I was like, you got to figure out something that works and do that. That's literally what I said, word for word, is you got to figure out something that works and do that. And he got pretty quiet. And in my head, I'm like, damn, that probably was like really anticlimactic for him, and like, kind of fell short of possibly the profound answer that he'd hoped for that might kind of answer some questions. But that's what I have for him. And I saw him a couple more times after that, and then I didn't see him for a couple months, and then, of course, I saw him again. But after that couple months, when I did talk to him again, he shared with me, he's like, well, man, it was like 90 days. He's like, I had 90 days in that relapse. I was like, okay, I've been there for sure. And he's like, you know what, though, man? One thing that helped me get that 90 days, and one thing that's still with me, is what you said to me. When we were talking about God and I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. And you looked at me and you said, you got to figure out something that works and do that. And he was like, dude, it was so simple. And you were so matter of fact about it. But in that moment, like it isn't even anything that's like extraordinarily profound or remarkable anyway. in any way. But in that moment, it made perfect sense to me. And I was like, oh shit, figure out what works and do that. That's fucking perfect. And so that's what I started to do. And I got 90 days. I mean, I relapsed, but I still have that. You know what I'm saying? And that meant a lot. And again, that's one of the higher points and one of the larger reasons why I do this work is to be in those moments, because those moments of willingness for a lot of us are brief for sure and they're fleeting, but for some they only get a few, right? Maybe like literally one or two. So for me, taking this shit seriously, I only keep what I have by giving it away. So holding out in front of myself and other people a practical version of recovery for everyday life, for just like a regular everyday ass dude who was, pretty fucked up out there. And why we keep a higher personal standard for which we live our lives by, thus increasing the likelihood that in those moments we're prepared to be, not that we're looking for them, but just like who we are and how we present and interact with people. In those moments, there's a possibility that we could be or supply that message for people, a person that needs it. Now, is it true that a lot of us aren't going to make it? Yeah. At least right now, that's just the reality of it. A lot of us just aren't going to make it. Fortunately for me, I don't have to bear the burden of trying to determine or figure out who isn't going to make it. Right? Because you never know. I guess, sure, you might be able to make an educated guess, sometimes. And I can't honestly say that I'm always am or have been judgment free, because that would be a lie. I'm not about to sit up here and tell that lie. But what I think is really, really cool is that I don't know any of these people out there outside of the fact that they're my human sisters and brothers, but they're also members of an addicted population from which I come from too. But other than that, I don't know them, but I know me. And if God can see fit for me to find a way out, to be shown a way out, and then given the ability to perform at least well enough to make that shit work and continue to do it, shit, so can you. I think that there's hope for you too. And I just want to say this too, man, for people who get hung up on the whole God thing. Don't. Just don't. And don't get hung up on the fact that it works for other people. Because in that moment, once you're focused on what's working for someone else and what isn't working for you, you're not focused on what isn't working for you or what could work for you. Instead, look at what other people are doing. Examine the joy that they have. Examine the experience that they're having. And figure out how you might be able to get elements of that in your own life. Talk to them about their higher power. You can call it whatever you want, but talk to them about how it works in their life and try to figure out, are there spaces available in your life, in your psyche, that you're willing to let be occupied by something other than you? And do that. Figure that shit out and do that. Because hell, man, at least if you're on that path, at least if you're on the journey or you're on the task of trying to figure that out, you have less time to focus on what the next motherfucker is doing. You have less time to focus on the next person's program. You have less time to be resentful and to bemoan the station of your life if you're actively participating and doing something about changing it. If you didn't do it on the way in, think about doing it on the way out. Hit that like, subscribe, and post notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the cool, fun, wacky, zany, and dope-ass shit we talk about here in the Bees Like That podcast. Peace, y'all. We did it. Ha ha. Yeah, see y'all next time.